Well, hello today to you, friend. Welcome to Read Through the Word. Today is Wednesday, October 2nd. We are reading today from a beautiful set in the text, that's often called the Sermon on the Mount. It's a beautiful picture that Jesus was giving to people of what does the kingdom of God look like? And it was very upside down from a lot of what they might have expected at that time. And so we have this beautiful picture that Jesus is giving to say, if you want to know what my kingdom looks like, this is it. And a beautiful, beautiful picture of the kind of God that he was trying to show the people that he is, and how they can live within his kingdom, what that looks like. So we're going to focus today on Matthew 5, verse 39. Jesus is speaking to people, and one of the things he says to this crowd is, "But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also." And the name of my lesson, I gave it the name Context, because that verse could surely be taken out of context, couldn't it? Many can, but for sure that one could. We're going to talk about what does it mean. Let's set a little background here first. So, first of all, this is often called the Sermon on the Mount. That's the word that someone has given it. That's not the word in the actual original text. And the word sermon is actually pretty misleading. You know, Jesus didn't come in and enter a pulpit or a big stage. It wasn't like this actual sermon type thing, so to speak, that we might think of. The crowds had been following Jesus to see his miracles. And so with his followers near, Jesus began to teach them. And it says that Jesus sat down. Although one would stand to read scripture publicly, the most respected Jewish teachers usually sat to teach with the disciples at their feet. Scholars still discuss whether, I should just preface this, in Luke, there are some very similar teachings, but it says that Jesus was teaching them on a level place. And scholars still discuss whether Luke's Sermon on the Plain, so to speak, and Matthew's Sermon on the Mount, they discuss still, were they two different records of the same discourse, or were they records of two different but similar dialogues that happened at different times? So there still is discussion about that. Jesus certainly could have, gone up on the hillside and talk to his disciples and then also come down, and could have still been teaching in a level area, but still at the mountain. And so it is still discussed as to what might be the possibility if those are the same thing or if they're different. And these verses are introduced by a common Old Testament literary form called Beatitudes. Like Psalm 1:1 would be an example. And this form also appears in some Greek literature, but it is most common in Jewish sources. Most people believed that the kingdom, at this time in history, a lot of Jewish people believed that the kingdom would be ushered in by war and by force. But Jesus said the kingdom belonged to the poor in spirit, the humble, the peacemakers. Really an upside down kingdom in many of their eyes. Also, the term poor could encompass either physical poverty or those in desperate need of God, poor in spirit. It could have encompassed either of those meanings or both. Another interesting fact here is in Matthew 5:18, he talks about, the smallest letter And the Greek word iota, which is translated the smallest letter, is the nearest Greek equivalent to the Hebrew yod, the smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet. The Greek word translated here as least stroke of a pen means horn, which referred to the light embellishment or extension of certain letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Now, I tried something. It's on the back of a piece of scratch paper here. I have no idea if this will show up or if it will work. I am learning Greek and Hebrew right now, but I am not great at writing it. So I did my best, but I wanted to kind of show you. This. This is the Hebrew word for day, yom. And right here is the yod. It's a Hebrew letter. It's a letter in the Hebrew alphabet called a yod. Mine is not amazing. It's just almost like a little squiggle. Yod, Y-O-D-H. So that's that little yod right there. Now, this is big. I wrote this really, really large. When you're looking at small text, like in a manuscript, when you're looking at the Old Testament, with the small words and the small text, especially in Hebrew, that's pretty small. Okay? And so they also talk about then the closest thing to it in Greek called iota. And it's very small. And I just want to say too, I actually made it bigger than it probably is. So right here, we have the Greek word theo, which is the Greek word. This means to God. So there is, if you look under it makes the O sound. So theo. And if you look under it, you see this little tiny dash. Okay, this little tiny dot. There are different, in different forms of Greek words, they have different endings to show grammatical things. For example, the ending of a word might change to show that it is of something, or that it is part of the subject part of the sentence versus the predicate part of the sentence. So the endings of words will change sometimes to reflect their grammatical usage in the sentence. And this little iota goes right below various endings of words to show that it's the dative case, meaning to something. So that's why this means to God, because the little tiny iota shows that it's the dative case to something. I hope that makes sense. The point is, this iota is very small in the text. When you look at it in an actual text, it's very tiny, but it's really important because it indicates the grammatical, the grammar of that word. So that verse is talking about, the smallest letter, the smallest thing. That's how small it is. That's how important Jesus is saying it is. So just some really, hope you enjoyed some of that background and just kind of a thought for what it was like, the Sermon on the Mount. Maybe we should just call it the teaching on the hill or the teaching on the level plain. And just the power behind the words that Jesus was saying, because some of it was really different than what people thought it might be. And he used beautiful pictures like the yod and the iota to show, again, Jesus always taught in pictures to help people understand. So now that we kind of have some background to this teaching, I want to just focus on this one verse. And the reason why is because I thought that when I looked in a commentary, I thought this was interesting. It said, what they're talking about if someone slaps you on the right cheek, it's a backhanded blow on the right cheek, and it says the backhanded blow on the right cheek was the most grievous insult in the ancient Near East, punishable under law, not just in the Jewish world, but in the pagan world as well, in the Roman world as well. And it said its purpose was not to injure, but to insult. So Jesus was not advocating an allowance of violence or harm, but teaching that his followers should not be consumed with just like fighting and defending themselves, like, I'm going to fight for my honor, because perhaps the perpetrator's insults weren't always worth defending. And this verse can definitely be taken out of context, because Jesus is in no way asking us to endure harm, for example, in a church, in a marriage relationship, in a family relationship. This is not a verse that says, hey, if you're being abused, mistreated, turn the other cheek, let them keep harming you. If you're in a church position where you are being mistreated, just turn the other cheek and keep serving, be a good servant. That is not what that verse is saying. Because again, the purpose was not to injure, but to insult. This blow to the right cheek that they're talking about was not supposed to hurt or cause like actual physical harm. It was an insult. And sometimes I think in the proper context, this verse could help us, because maybe it's not something that where we're being mistreated or harmed, but maybe somebody is just being real unkind and they lodge an insult at us. Or we hear insults, and I am sure, right now, I feel like in this time in history, in our country especially, I just feel like there's insults being lodged back and forth, even within the church, and that should not be. And social media is a prime place where this happens. Do you see a lot of lodging insults, backhanded insults on social media? I have to be real careful how much time I spend on social media. It can get real discouraging. And I think in our own heart, we have this feeling of, oh, I have to defend myself, defend my honor, or I have to say something. I have to comment on this person's meme or Facebook page or Instagram post. I have to comment because this is insulting what they're saying. And I have to make sure that they know they're wrong. Maybe we don't. Maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe we turn the other cheek and say, I understand you feel that way. Maybe we turn the other cheek and say, I'd be interested to hear more about why you feel that way. Wouldn't that be radical? I'm not saying that we always have to do that. I'm saying that could be an example of turning the other cheek. Or maybe it's just simply, we're not going to come out with guns blazing trying to defend ourselves from an insult that actually it's not going to cause us permanent harm. Maybe we can turn the other cheek and say, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to respond to this. And ultimately, I think too, Jesus, he says other things like, love your enemy, pray for your enemy. Maybe he's saying, look, you might not agree with that person and they may have insulted you, but God is saying, I made them too. They're made in my image. These are people we're supposed to treat with the respect that they're made in the image of God as well. So enduring mistreatment within a relationship that should be safe and kind and loving, absolutely not. That would be the wrong context. But enduring an insult that simply might go against what I believe or think, or I think it makes me look bad in some way, or makes me want to kind of come out fighting and giving words and showing how I'm right, not always necessary. Maybe in those instances, maybe in the next time you hear or see a political post or a religious view that you don't agree with, or something that just feels personally insulting to you, to sit back and say, do I need to say something? Or can I just turn the other cheek? Can I just trust that God is going to work this situation out? And that my job is to love others the way I want to be loved. Just some food for thought. Thanks for joining us here today, folks, on Read Through the Word.